I'm one of the game developers working on Dwarf. It's a tower defense dungeon crawler RPG. So do me a solid and wishlist this game on Steam, so that way I don't have to be poor forever. Support that dev life, boy. So in Dwarf, we have this cool crystal biome, but I want to add a few more sprites to it, because in the story, what'll happen when you come to this crystal biome is it'll be a location where the dwarves used to practice magic, and they were all spiritual and stuff like that. So we kind of need a place that, you know, maybe has like altars or something like that. So we have these like pillars, they look like marble pillars, right? And that's okay for like a little bit of structure, but I think we need a little bit extra. So I was looking up props like Roman altars, sacrifice tables, something like that, you know, something a little bit dwarven. Oh, whoa, dude, that is messed up. Roman columns, bowls, you know, props that will really give you an idea of what was going on here, that this was a place of worship and stuff. So in Dwarf, we have these destructible pots, and check this out. And they're pretty cool, but I don't think these fit this biome. So hopefully you guys already know this, but you can just take sprites and drag them into your project. And I'm going to use this as a reference because I want to make sure that the pot is somewhat similar and we got to keep the same style and everything, you know? And the next thing that I like to do is I like to change the background from white to the background that that item will be on, so I can see what the contrast is going to be between that and between the object and the floor. So I think I'm going to make the pot for this biome look a little bit more like a vase. I think that'll be more fitting. We're going to go with a similar shape though, but I don't have to stick to the 16 by 16 constraints, since this isn't a tile on the floor that needs to, you know, fit perfectly. It's an object, so it can be a little bit taller than 16 by 16. Dwarf doesn't stick to the old school limitations of, let me use the circle tool. Where's that? There it is. Dwarf doesn't stick to the old school limitations of like the NES or whatever. So what I'm just going to do right now is kind of create a silhouette for this vase. And I don't have a clear idea of what it's going to look like in my head. And I think it's better to do it that way, because if you know exactly what you want it to look like, you might have trouble doing that in with pixel art. So I kind of just like see what this small tight little space allows me to do. I don't try to force things that don't fit in here, you know? I think this shape is pretty good. Something that I like to do is I often like to do the outline almost right away, because I like to make the outline part of the artwork that I'm doing. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this an outline. I don't like putting outlines where the outline touches the bottom, and I am going to shade the outline just like you see up there. Okay, so we could start with shading or we could start with highlights. I think I would prefer to start with highlights. So I'm just going to grab this color from there. Later on I might hue shift this, but I like reusing colors that are in other places in the same sort of biome or whatever. It makes things look more cohesive. It makes them look like they fit together, you know? So we're adding some shading here, and depending on how I meant highlight. We're adding a highlight here, and depending on how we highlight this, it changes the shape of the bottle, of this vase or whatever. Vase. I wonder if you call it a vase or a vase. Vase sounds so fancy, doesn't it? So check it out. A lot of times, the shape is actually decided by the shading. So if I shade it like this, it looks rounder, and like this it looks flatter, right? So check it out. If I do this, it almost looks like there's a corner here. It would actually be better like this. So now it looks like this is a really sharp edge, whereas when I make this round, it makes this kind of feel rounder too. And you can experiment with all sorts of different kinds of shading. Ooh, I got another one that we could do. We could do one where it kind of bends. You see that? It kind of bends around like that, and that makes that emphasizes that it's round. If you want to support the channel, I have my own clothing line called Panic Pop, link in the description, and I just added a Naruto knit sweater. Show some love for the Leaf Village with this massive knit Naruto sweatshirt design. Dang, it's pretty cool, right? Definitely love to shade the edges right here in my furniture video that probably a lot of you have seen. I keep referencing it. whenever you're doing an edge, you want to create contrast between that edge. So another way to do it would be to, of course, add black right here, right? To separate these two objects. But instead, I'm going to do it with a highlight and shading. So check this out. I put a highlight here, and then I'm going to put shading underneath. Actually, let me grab this color right here. Wait, am I using that one? No, I'm not. Yes, let me grab this color and put it right here. And you can see now that it really makes that look like it sticks out, and we didn't even need to use that black outline. I think another spot to put a few more highlights would be maybe here and here. I'll turn off the horizontal symmetry tool here because I want this top to look a little more natural. Or if we want reflection, you don't want it to be the same on both sides. It's okay to even like shade just one side and not the other, because lighting isn't always perfect on all sides. So I think something like this kind of looks pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
And then for the inside, instead of just making it completely black, what we can do is check it out. I'll pick this color, go to a very low opacity, and then near the top I'm creating a gradient, right? So that it looks like it's darker inside. You can see we did that here with the pot too, and it really makes it look like the hole has some kind of some depth to it. And actually, we can make this probably even lighter, the edge here near the top. There we go. All right, and now these two are pretty similar, but I do want to make this one look like it was, you know, more artsy, like it was more significant, like it was more time consuming to make it. And an easy way to do that would be to add some kind of graphic on here. Now graphic is going to be pretty hard, so I'm just going to try some very basic stuff, maybe just sort of like a zigzag. Let's see what that comes out like. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where millions come together to take part in the next step to their creative journey. There's all sorts of stuff you can learn on Skillshare, whether it's fine art, music production, film and videography. There's everything there. Something I have a lot of trouble with is productivity, and Ali really breaks that down and helps show how to stay productive. It's curated for learning, meaning there's no ads, and honestly, it's pretty tempting for me to make some videos on there. Skillshare is less than $10 a month with the annual subscription, and the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. I think that looks alright. That already looks like it had some kind of meaning. Maybe let's do something like this. Yeah, that already looks pretty awesome. And now let's add some shading to this. So for the shading, I can't really do this same color that I used for this graphic because it'll mess with the graphic. So I think I'm gonna have to grab a different color. Maybe this darker one here. This one might be a little too dark. Yeah, I think I don't know. It's not too dark, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and shade the bottom. Maybe even shade this part. And you see how I shaded the middle, not the sides? I'm just looking at the preview right now to see whether it looks better if we shade the middle right there or if we shade the edges. And it kind of doesn't matter whether you shade the edges or the middle. In this case, I think I'm actually gonna go with the middle. However, the contrast is too high between these two. So I'm gonna create an in-between color by lowering the alpha. And that way I can gradually do this sort of gradient, and I'll use that same color here. Actually, that still seems pretty dark. I need to create an even lighter color. So I'm just mixing these. There we go. Now that's a decent gradient color, and I think I'll do that. And now this vase looks really round. I'm really liking it. We could shade these edges right here. So you could add shading on the edges like that. Or we could add a highlight. If we wanted it to look very reflective, we can add a highlight on the edges. And honestly, a lot of times when I have a really difficult decision to make like that, I like to just duplicate it and do both. It's like, it doesn't take much time, and it can make a huge difference in your artwork. So don't try to just like predict what things are going to look like all the time. Sometimes it's better to just go ahead and draw it and then decide which one looks better. All right, so the right one has shading, the left one has the highlight. I like the reflective highlight one, don't you guys? Except I don't think it should be that bright. So I'm going to lower the opacity on that white. And then we could even add some of these highlights in the design, and it'll make it look like the design has grooves. You know what I'm talking about? So if we put these in the right spots, it'll kind of look like the design is beveled a little bit. And I don't want to overdo it, but just enough so that it looks like there's some kind of texture to it. Maybe I'm going to turn off the symmetry tool, maybe right there too. And it makes it look more reflective. I think that's pretty good. Is this pure white? That's not pure white. I knew it. So sometimes I like to go to pure white and add a pure white highlight into like one spot. So let's put it right there, and then maybe on the lip right here somewhere. All right, now we got a nice reflective spot there. You can barely see it because this is already so bright. I don't know if I want to keep this so bright, but we could lower the brightness right there just to emphasize the contrast with that highlight. I do that sometimes when I want something to pop more. I increase the contrast with the color that's next to it. So I'm gonna put this over here, and now I'm gonna do the same thing as before where I compare which one's better. So this one has the increased contrast, that one doesn't. Which one do you guys think is better? Man, that's a tough decision, right? I do like the contrast here, but it also kind of messes up the shape of the vase. I don't know, it looks like it has more detail, right? It kind of just looks better. I do like the idea of increasing the contrast there, but it doesn't need to be that big of a jump. So if I put this here, this here, this here, that'll emphasize that highlight, and that's all we really want to do. We just want to emphasize that highlight. I'm gonna put that same shading here, here, and here, and here, so that way this lip right here next to this glare is the part that is the brightest. And up here, the pixel art program that I'm using is called Aspray. If you want to get it, use the link in the description, because I'll get a tiny little kickback and I can buy some ramen. Here we could probably put this color. I'm looking at the preview now, because when you're this close you really can't see how it affects the artwork. I think that's fine. I do think we should make this color darker though, because it'll smooth that transition. And then this color right here should probably be darker. I'm just gonna lower it a little bit, and it's so subtle, but people will notice stuff like that. The reason the one on the right is brighter is because it's getting more light. Actually, I'll just make them the same color, and maybe even this one needs to be that dark. Yeah, I think even these need to be darker, and these need to be lighter. So I'm going to take this color, lower the opacity, not that much, not that much. There we go. And now basically I'm just smoothing, I'm kind of just smoothing the transition. I think there's too much black. We need to move this lower. Oops, I'm messing it up. Oh man, something like that. Okay, yeah, and now that's a much smoother transition, a much better gradient for that hole in the vase. I think this vase is pretty close to done. I would honestly kind of just leave it here, but something I do like to do that you guys by now should probably know about is I love to use the outline to shade with the outline as well. So for example, right here, this is really drastic, right? So there's no transition there, and I'm going to create a color that's in between, and on the bottom right here I do like to transition that color out, and maybe something like this. And this one is still too bright, so let me transition that even better. And now there's a nice smooth transition there near the bottom. And then since the light is coming from above, I would also probably make these a little bit brighter here, because these corners are getting some light. Maybe even go as far as making this one and this one brighter. And then near the top, I think I would make this section right here near the top just a little bit brighter. It doesn't have the best transition though. because it goes to black so quickly that it makes it a little obvious. So I might even, usually when you go diagonally, the transition works so much better. It's so weird, but I don't know if you guys ever noticed that, but check this out. If we have these 3 dots like this, or we have 3 dots like this, and if I put this color here or here, the diagonal transition is a lot easier on the eyes than a corner. If you have a corner, it makes it, the contrast between these two becomes higher, and that's because here, look at all the this is so much more information than you guys need, but here, this tiny little piece is the only part that's touching, and so that's the only part that's comparing the 2 colors, whereas here you have an entire side, so it's much easier to see the contrast between these 2. And that's why I think instead of this one being black, it looks better if this is the lighter color. I think the transitions work better diagonally. I don't know if that made sense. Of course they work. You can do transitions fine going vertical, but when you go vertical, it looks to me, at least to me, it looks like it could use an extra color almost all the time, an extra transition color like this right here. Whereas diagonally, you don't really notice stuff like that as much. I'm gonna leave it at that. And then of course we should add a shadow. And I'm just gonna move this up. For shadows, what I like to do is I like to create a new layer and then go fully black, 100%, right? And then just around the edge, whatever, do the shadow. And then what you can do is double click that layer and you can lower the opacity to whatever you like. And usually I like it around 30. So something I like to do just for fun is duplicate whatever my drawing is and then do some drastic changes to it, right? So to make it look more like a vase, I actually got an idea, and that is to move this up. Because you know how vases sometimes they have that like extra bottom part, and then here I probably would use a really dark color. So I got 3 decent looking ones. In the comment section below, let me know which one is your favorite. I don't know if you guys know about Itch, but it's a great place to play free indie games. I mean, there's some for sale too, but anyway, I have a link in the description below, and I have free to use in-game art assets so you can get your game started with my art. How cool is that? I'll see you guys next time. Dev Life.